Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome, everybody. If you are here for a webinar about the Leader Pulse Check Survey, the results that we found and ways that you can learn from these results and apply it to your team, you're in the right place. This is the Responsive Leadership Elements of Leadership to Address Top Priorities webinar. We've still got people joining us. So we'll give maybe another minute for people to come on in the room.
Welcome.
And okay, I think since we've only got an hour, I don't know that we'll need the whole hour, but we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to our webinar. And while you're joining, Bree, would you like to kind of walk us through this check-in question?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us. While we're getting started, you can just check in the chat. Please share your name, your location. I know some of you have already done that. And while looking at the screen, we'd like you to check in with the number you most identify with. We hope that you are all Ted Lasso fans. If you are not, then this is your friendly suggestion to watch the show. But we just really love the show and its message. And we chose some characters here. Hopefully you can resonate with one of them to see who or how you are most feeling and the number you most identify with. So we have little descriptions under each character, and feel free to check in with your name, location, as well as the number in the chat. Lasso all day long. I love that.
As you're checking in, one thing just to make sure of, it looks like most people are pretty hip to the Zoom webinar thing by now, but sometimes you may be accidentally just sending this to panelists. So not everybody will be able to see what you chat. And I'm sure if you're thinking enough about it to chat it, it'd be great if everybody could see it. So just make sure that if you're sending something, it's going to hosts and panelists, or sorry, host panelists going to everybody. Okay, we've got some Kathy from Ohio. Hey, Kathy.
Yeah, hi, Kathy.
And we've got some people from Arizona. We've got people from all over the place. Well, this is exciting. Thank you all for joining. Oh, and I haven't even been paying attention to numbers. We got a lot of Ted Lassos.
Yeah, lots of 2s, lots of 4s. Keely's another one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I haven't seen a 3 yet, but maybe I just haven't looked enough. Here we go, Emily.
Emily, thanks.
Emily, thanks for coming in with the 3. Okay, well, thanks everybody for checking in. And we'll go ahead and
yeah, let's get started. So good morning, everyone. I'm Bree. I am coming to you live from Belmar Beach, New Jersey. My background is in elementary education and professional development for teachers at the elementary level. And I'm so excited to be here and just talk through this important matter with you in the next hour.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Megan Campion. I'm the cartoon on the left. I am a partner at Education Elements. My background in education is, it's pretty long, I'm pretty old. And I have actually been working a lot on our leadership work. So I'm really excited to be talking about that today with you, as well as the results of this survey and the white paper that came from it. If you are among the uninitiated, we'll just give you a little overview about Education Elements. We're an education consultancy group. We help transform schools and districts, and we work with schools and districts all over the country. We have been around for, I think we're 11 years now, so we do need to up this slide. And we've worked with, as I said, schools and districts all over the country on all sorts of different projects. I think a lot of them, the kind of common thread would be change management. We do believe that schools grow when people grow, which today we'll be talking a bit about learning organizations, and that is sort of a foundational belief of a learning organization. We think that schools are better when designed for maximizing each student's potential, and we like to bring out the best in people and their communities by being really thoughtful about the way you design systems. And the way that we work with districts is very customized. So we really do start with a lot of empathizing and getting to know and listening to the things that are top of mind. We come with a whole toolkit that is totally, we try to pull the right tools for the right task. And we are always oriented toward building capacity and preparing teams for sustained change.
Alrighty. So in the fall of 2021, we began to notice some trends across all of the districts and schools that we worked with, which really got us wondering if we were only talking with the people who had these problems, or if our experience was an accurate representation of the things that were actually top of mind for schools and districts just overall. And we've solicited input from over 200 leaders from urban, suburban, and rural communities across the country. And we are really eager to discuss what we have learned and the ideas that we have about how to address these concerns. So today in our conversation, we are going to align on the top priorities facing most school district leaders. And we're going to align on the leader elements and how to apply them, as well as, plan for a culture of learning.
So the top priorities that were identified by the school and district leaders who responded to our survey. As Bree mentioned, we had been, hearing things anecdotally, and we were sort of comparing notes when we would have conversations with district partners and with other people who were getting back to school this year. And then doing this pulse check survey was actually really interesting. I think we have all heard a lot about learning loss, and we've heard about this as a concern, the long-term impact of sort of, disrupted schooling and what that might be for students. So we sort of anticipated that was going to be the thing. And it was really interesting to find that in the results that came out, it's in the top 3. Learning loss was in the top 3, but actually culture and climate for districts or schools and concerns about employee retention. Those were things that came in as top of mind at a higher prevalence rate among the respondents than even learning loss. The kind of metrics here for these results are that 71% of the respondents named culture and climate of their district or school as one of their top 3 concerns, and 49% named it in their top 2 concerns. These are the numbers for sort of the re-energizing and retaining your workforce. That teacher retention number is, we've got 55% of the respondents named it in their top 3, and 38 named it in their top 2. And I think especially recently, you can see that this particular issue is really top of mind and is having a huge impact across a bunch of communities. And there are attempts being made to sort of address these sort of acute problems around staffing shortages when you have people calling out with COVID surges in various parts of the country, people unable to come to work. And you can see the headlines that you can read anywhere in the country show that, schools are desperate for substitutes. It's really difficult to get substitutes. They're closing classrooms for a day a week. Some schools have gone remote again, and there's all sorts of creative solutions for getting people, adults in the building, to be able to accommodate school in the face of these staffing shortages as people are unable to come in. So some of the solutions that we've seen are really creative and really interesting. The New Mexico governor signing up to be a substitute teacher, soliciting parents to come in and substitute. And then this one is also very interesting. This one really stood out to me. Bree, did you want to walk us through this one?
Yeah, I mean, this just goes to show like even private industry is engaging in the problem and suggesting creative solutions, because the disruption in school isn't just happening to schools and the people in schools. It's something that's impacting the entire community and all levels of a community. So we have a tweet here of Watermark Bank. And it says, starting today, Watermark Bank is providing our employees the resources and support necessary to obtain their substitute certifications. And they're actually encouraging their employees to dedicate 2 days per month to be substitute teachers, to help out the communities in their classrooms. And I think this just goes to show like the need is real, and it's not just happening, you know, to you and your district. You know, it's happening throughout the whole country.
So yeah, all of these headlines show that this really acute concern. There are a lot of there's a lot of thought and a lot of energy going to address this really, really urgent issue. But what was interesting that we found in the survey, and what was written about in the white paper that resulted from kind of the review of this survey, is that there's recognition that there is a need for a longer term solution for a lot of the things that that were top of mind for the leaders who responded to our survey. So the white paper that we've got the image of here, we'll be sharing that. If we haven't already shared the link in the chat, we will be sharing the link to that. And in this, you can see, you know, a larger sort of deeper dive into all of the results. But one of the things that is clear is that K-12 leaders are going to be prioritizing efforts to build this more supportive culture. We saw culture and climate as the most, that was the number one of all of those metrics that we were sharing. It was the one that most leaders had said were in their top 3, because that's something that kind of, it addresses all of, you know, certainly the other 2 that we're talking about. But if we're thinking about teacher retention, or we're thinking about addressing the impact of interrupted schooling, making sure that there is a school climate and a culture in place that supports learning is going to be the thing that's going to be the much longer term solution. So we're going to pause here and give you a chance to weigh in on what do you think, when you're thinking about this in your own context, the biggest barrier to a supportive culture, a culture that supports learning across all levels in your school or district? And if you don't want to put it in the chat with your school or district, you could just think of a school or district maybe you've heard of that you're thinking this. Yes, we all agree this is important, but I see this as a big barrier. And I don't have the chat up, so Bree, I'm going to ask you to keep an eye on that and let us know if you see anything that's worth calling out with the group.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the chat, the link to the white paper was also shared that Megan was just talking about. So yeah, I see the responses are rolling in, Meg. I see teacher burnout, sports versus academic, trust. Yeah, Nicole, trust is a big word. I feel like all we do is talk about, Megan and I, all we do is talk about trust. Trust that everyone is well-intentioned in their efforts. Yes, Amber. The fact that some schools, like private schools, have budget restrictions. Yeah, there are fossils in school who obstruct buy-ins for others. Trying to slow down and address the creation of a supportive environment has been difficult. It's go, go, go all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah, we feel that lack of understanding what is going on in the trenches. There's a lot of teacher needs, student needs, a variety between the two, hesitation to change, exhaustion, capacity. Yeah, these responses are great. Thank you everyone for bringing those in. Capacity rushing to cover too much curriculum.
I think what I'm hearing in all of these is, I mean, really the school systems, I think K-12 education, I don't know. I have been saying this for a while and now I'm sort of checking myself. I do think that of the sectors of the sectors of our society that have undergone the most stress in the past couple of years, I do think education is up there. I think education and healthcare are the two that have really been bombarded with stress after stress after stress. And it is really clear that it's hard to get strategic and do the slow work that needs to be in place to create that supportive culture when you are having to be so reactive. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is how we could take these things that are sort of top of mind priorities and think about, like, what does that mean for an individual leader? Because sometimes you feel like the problem is so overwhelming that you can't think of a step you could take. And that's what we'll be talking about in the second part of our conversation here. We're going to be talking about what this means down to the individual leader. Through the leadership elements applied. So
yeah, and thanks, Meg. It just goes to show, just bouncing off what you just shared, those small steps that you can take as a leader, it's the type of leadership that is creating the kind of culture that we want to see and hope for, and kind of like separate from the responses that are in the chat, right? We want to see a culture and a climate within your communities that is like a nurturing trust, a psychologically safe environment. And we're going to talk about creating that culture of learning. So we have some visuals here, and the challenges of the past year, like the ones you just stated in the chat, but also in addition, so many more constraints. But those challenges have really highlighted the need for schools and school districts and that need to really, really become learning organizations. The reason that is so important is because the solutions for your community are going to be different than the solutions for somebody else's. And for people to do really hard things and for change to happen and take place, people have to feel like they are part of finding those solutions, kind of like what Megan just talked on. And people have to be able to learn together. So they want to feel like they're a part of finding the solution, but they also want to feel like a team and they're able to learn together and have that trust. And in order to create a culture of learning, we have to ground in on the importance of leaning into a culture of learning if you're looking to solve for these problems. Because we have to keep the mindset that they're going to be different for maybe in other communities' problems. So we need to have these structures in place where we can learn from and with our community in a way that it's supportive and voices are heard. So you may be.
Can I just say one thing here about the visual we're looking at too? I think for the uninitiated, I think many people that I've come across in education are very familiar with Peter Senge's work. And that's what we're looking at here. We're using Peter Senge's research on the things that are the common characteristics that he found in learning organizations and thinking about how can you bring that to a school? If we know that that there is such a thing as a learning organization, and there are things that you can be building toward incorporating these 5 disciplines of a learning organization, you can be working toward incorporating them in your school or district. And taking those steps are going to mean that the effort that you're extending is going kind of in the right direction. It's going to get you in a place where you can be building that sort of supportive learning environment. So sorry, Bri, I just wanted to
Oh, don't be sorry. Yeah. And I feel like that's
explain the visual here.
Yeah, and those that framing is so important because we're going to be using this framing as we talk about the ways that school leaders can help build these learning organizations. So like Megan shared, Peter Senge is awesome. He's an organizational psychologist, and we're going to be using his framework to help guide us and help build these learning organizations. So you'll see a quote on the screen. Take a moment to read it. This quote really just helps reflect like the survey results, and the survey results really confirm a lot of anecdotal evidence that our team has been reporting, that school leaders are aware that a more strategic engagement with these problems is crucial. And even as they are implementing short-term solutions to get through crisis, it is crucial that we need to be aware of a more strategic engagement. And we know that this type of work doesn't come easily or quickly, and we have to really invest the time and the funding to help build a team that can address these challenges.
Mm-hmm. In the white paper, when you read it, you'll see that one of the things that's called out, I guess there's a couple things that are called out as sort of critical needs for addressing the top of mind problems. And two of the things that we'll be leaning into in how we frame what you as an individual leader can do and what your teams can do are stakeholder engagement, that involving the voices of all of your stakeholders, and then also creating the conditions so that people can, I'm using create too many times in a sentence, but basically you want people to have a pathway to co-creation for solutions for all of the reasons that Bri named, that these things that need to get solved for are so unique to each community that they need to feel like they're solutions that are fitted for each community, which means community members have to have a role in co-creating. So we're going to show just the definitions of those different disciplines next.
Yeah, and we're going to give you some time to read through the disciplines, maybe even take note of the colors. But these are the organizational disciplines, and it can be really hard to know as a leader where to start off with. We're going to talk through that on the next slide. But before we do that, we just wanted to share, it's so important to know what it means when we're talking about how to be engaging and how to tackle these problems strategically. So when we think about building a team that can successfully address these challenges, we also want to be thinking about these disciplines. So take a moment to just check it out. We're going to talk through them in depth on the next few slides. Maybe take note of the color, but these are just the organizational disciplines. And like I said earlier, it's kind of hard to know as a leader where to start, where to begin. And you'll see on the next slide.
So this is the elements of leadership. And this is, we touched on those sort of organizational disciplines for a learning organization. If we want to be sure that your school and district is a place that can sort of foster learning from and with each other, that's how you want your school or district to be. But how do you get there as an individual? Like, where's the individual contribution to creating that? And that's what this table of elements is for. So each of these are sort of discrete, learnable, measurable skills that you can reflect on. You can say, you can look at this list and say, like, where are you strong and where might you need to bolster your skills a little bit. Or you could look at this through the lens of a balanced team. Like, is a project that you're tackling, do you have the right people on that team? Do you have the right set of strengths and I don't know, areas for growth on that team where somebody on the team is going to be able to learn and lead? So this is the elements of leadership. They are color coded because they do align with the organizational disciplines. So in the blue bank of squares, those are all the things that would be part of personal mastery for an organization. These are the things that you want to know that leaders in an organization have if we're thinking about personal mastery. The yellow is mental models. So if you want to be a place where it is an organizational discipline to recognize that there are ways of thinking of things and other people may have different ways of thinking them, these are the things you want to be thinking about. Likewise, green is going to be that shared vision. Red is team learning. And then the gray is systems thinking. There will not be a quiz on this. So, and if there were, it'd be open book because we'll be sharing a resource that has all of this in it. But for the purposes of what we're going to be kind of walking you through, Bree and I selected 3 of the disciplines to be honing in on. And the first one's mental models, because if we are trying to create an environment, if the goal is we want more stakeholder engagement and we want the conditions for co-creation, we do want to be able to rely on the fact that we hold as a value that we are open to alternative points of view, and we will weigh alternative points of view. So the definition of mental models, you can see, is the ability to compare new ideas with internal images of how the world works. And the goal there is so that we don't all get stuck in one way of thinking, because that can limit innovation. So these are 3 different areas that an individual person could focus on for development to be able to create that organizational discipline. This is shared vision. That's the second one, thinking if we're in a space where we want to be able to co-create, we probably want to be all co-creating for the same outcome. And these are the things that you'd want to be thinking about for shared vision, creating the conditions where the whole team can have that common picture of a desired future. And then finally, team learning, getting your team aligned and developed so that you can be creating the results that you desire. And this is where that sort of like learning with and from each other comes into play. This is something where you want everybody to be having that learning experience, which creates that culture of learning. So having kind of walked you through this little subsection of the elements, you might be wondering, okay, well, so what do I do with this? Like once I see this, so I'm going to use myself as an example, model vulnerability here, and tell you that I'm not a super transparent person. And when I have I've gotten feedback on this. I have thought about it a lot in terms of my role for creating like that organizational discipline of mental models. And I'm a very reflective person and I'm pretty good with inquiry, but honestly, transparency is not my thing. I'm never the first person to speak in a meeting. I very rarely post things publicly. I'm just sort of a more naturally reticent person, but I need to push myself to get more transparent. So transparency, the definition of transparency that I'm operating under here is the definition of transparency in our table of elements, which is operating in such a way so that others can see clearly what actions are performed and making my thinking visible. So this is my little personal growth area. I'll show you what my plan is for that. And we'll also give, let's say I'm going to move to our next slide here so Bree can share what she's working on.
Yeah, and similar to Megan, just practicing, vulnerability here. This is, real life, something that I'm working on. I want to be able to be a leader who can support the alignment and development of my team's capacity. And in order to do that, I need to manage these conversations, right? If we're looking, I focus on facilitation. I should have started with that. And my definition is highlighted in red here. And in order to manage conversations that are nuanced, complex, oppositional, in order to support dialogue. I want to grow in this area. And this is something that is like wildly uncomfortable for me. Coming to EE, I realized it because in my previous career, it was working with students, and and they were young students. So it was very different day-to-day daily interactions. But now at EE, I realized that working with adults and school leaders such as yourself, sometimes I get really uncomfortable. And I don't get uncomfortable if someone's opinion doesn't agree with mine. I get uncomfortable with just like different, like just other, I get uncomfortable knowing that other people might feel weird or strange or might be against or feel different about a topic. So this is something I'm currently working on. And on the next slide, you'll see, and we'll share this resource bank with you in just a moment, but this next slide, you'll see we do have a resource bank where the elements are at the top, and each element is hyperlinked. And if you click on facilitation for example, it's going to it'll take you right down to the part of the document where a few resources are located that will help support the growth in this element. So whether they're all articles, there might be some videos or just practices. They are just resources to help you grow and change, modify, or just think about something differently. I mean, we'll see on the next slide, Megan, I don't know if you want to, and you'll see transparency here as well. But on the next slide, we have this plan fade. Oh yeah.
If I could, Bree, before we get there, one of the things that that you'll note when you start thinking this through with any of the elements, really, there's because we're saying this is something that is, these are knowable, learnable, measurable things. There's going to be components to them. So transparency has a few different components, and the list of resources that are there, the one that I would be kind of honing in on is like that vulnerability thing. I don't have an issue giving feedback like that. That isn't something I really need to focus on. So when you get to thinking about this and the areas where you want to grow, it doesn't mean that everything's going to apply, which is why we have a range of resources for you to explore and think about, like, what's the thing that you want to focus on. So here is the big reveal of like the goals that we've set and the ways that we plan to get there. So Bree, you want to share yours first?
Yeah, and thanks for naming that, Meg. I feel like that's so important. You'll notice on the resource bank, some of them are categorized based on, what component of the element it can help you grow in, but just being mindful of that is really important. So thanks for touching base on that, Meg. But yeah, so this is our planning canvas, and you'll see in red, you'll see my goal, which is focused around the idea of facilitation, right? I want to be able to manage conversations that are nuanced, complex, oppositional. And my plan for that is and I didn't just come up with this plan, right? I used the resources within the resource bank. And I read a really interesting article that talked about how to gain influence by voicing motivations other than my own. And whether you are leading the internal meeting or external meeting, or if you're just a member of it and it's a group led session, it's really easy, at least for me, to do a lot of the talking. I like to talk a lot, but I also want to make sure that everyone gets in accordance with the mission. And for our case at EE, because it's the right thing to do for the client. So keeping that bigger picture in mind and making sure that motivations are voiced, and everyone's in accordance, and all voices are being heard. So metrics to do this, I didn't want to just choose one because I feel like both of these would be really beneficial and helpful, but one is for me personally to provide myself with a reflection sheet after meetings and just do a quick write and be like, did I have a good understanding of other person's perspectives? Maybe I can try and write down what they were if I can remember them. And that would give me a good pulse check. Or I can give myself my own internal meeting audit. So keeping track of how many people were present and how many people spoke. Not only is that going to help me stay on task during a meeting and keep my mind focused on what's taking place currently and presently, it's also just going to help me reflect when the meeting is over to see, how many times did Megan share, or how many people were present in the meeting. So in addition to the metrics, you want to make sure that you're getting feedback, not just for yourself. Well, you're not just giving yourself feedback, you're also getting it from the people that you're working with, because we're creating that community and culture. So we have Google Forms here at EE, and one of them is just perfect for this, where you can just send it out to your teammates, that they're on the project with, that you are on the project with. And it's just a really quick Google form that can help you track the goal and just gather responses from other project partners. And that does kind of sound nerve-wracking, like, oh, well, and Megan just shared, she's really open and honest with feedback, which is amazing, because that's another thing that I feel wildly uncomfortable about. But, I don't like just being open and honest, and creating that safe space for trust. And I want to hear I know Megan wants to help me reach my goal. So I know that her feedback is going to be concise, and it's going to help me reach that goal. Even if I might, I think getting rid of the idea, like, I don't want to hurt someone else's feelings, is really important here. But
yeah, and I think like this is to tie this to sort of larger organizational goals as well. One of the things that the leadership elements and being able to apply your own professional development to the goals of your organization. It works really well in education, because, as educators, we all know, like, that is something students absolutely need feedback as they're learning a new skill. And teachers do a lot of work on how to deliver, effective, actionable feedback on a new skill. So this aligns really well with the work of education across the board, and also with that sort of stated goal that we're thinking about from the survey, that if we want to be able to create a space where we can engage stakeholders and we can co-create with the people that we serve, that openness to feedback and this sort of continuous feedback loop is really important. It also speaks to the need for schools and districts to be really responsive right now, because things are changing so fast that you need to be open to new information coming in. And you also need to be transparent, which is, of course, my goal. So you can see, and you've had plenty of time to read what my goal and my plan is. The same rule applies. My metrics are a little more objectively measurable, like anybody could look and see if I've actually done what I've said I'm going to do. So that's something that I would expect that I'll hear in feedback. If somebody is noticing I've done what I've said I would do. There's also going to be some more sort of I guess qualitative feedback. Like, do people feel like they're more informed? Is this the right move for me to be making if I want people to feel more informed? Or is this not an effective move and I need to switch to something else? So that's all part of getting that feedback too. So we're going to pause here, see if you have any questions. I think there's one thing in the chat that I haven't seen. I'm going to click and see here. Oh, and it's just sharing the resource bank. So you have access to the resource bank. I did see a question earlier about, like, okay, that's a big bank of elements. This wasn't in the question. This is an assumption I'm making, but where do you get started? And that's what we'll be talking about next. So if you have any questions at any time, go ahead and drop them in the chat and we will refer back to them. And I will go ahead and get us started thinking about that, like planning for a culture of learning.
Can I just hop in real quick? I just want to point out a question that just came in. And before we get into how it can be turned on to our participants, a question came in that says, is this something all team members should use?
Is this something, meaning the goal setting?
Yeah, and Shona, I hope I'm saying your name right, Shona. If you're referring to the planning canvas or just diving deep into the Elements Bank? Yes, she said yes. That was her question.
Yes, that is my answer. So,
Yeah.
and I am actually open to like different interpretations of this, but my, the theory is here, one, schools consist of leaders at all levels. We have student leaders in schools. We have, we have teacher leaders in schools. We have school administrators and district administrators. The bank of leadership elements isn't intended for the people who have, leader somewhere in their title exclusively. It really is the list of skills that you want to have reliably on your teams if you're creating this type of organization. So I think one, having an orientation and a common language around what these things mean and a value that this is something that we would like to see people with, and a process for reflecting on where you stand is, I think, good for all members of the team. I also think that there is real value in having a team that is working together towards something, have conversations about what their goals are so that it's clear what steps each person is taking to meet that organizational goal. So that's my way long-winded annotated yes.
We have a few more questions, Meg. From Deanne, it says, how do you go about helping the team know where they can plan growth based on the goal setting?
Okay, I think this is getting us right to where we need to be.
Yeah.
So there, to me, there's two questions there. There's like, where does the team need to grow? Like, what should the team goal be? And where is an area of growth for them to meet that goal? And then there's also the individual piece to that. So each member of the team is going to have a role in team growth, but identifying the right direction for the whole team to be going is also a question I'm reading into that question. So, and I don't know if I'm just doing that because I know what we're talking about next, and I'm hopeful that's what the question is.
I think so too. And Deanne, if not, if we transition into what's happening next, just let us know. But Meg, before I do want to, this is a design question. I can repost the resource bank, Annabella, in one moment, but I do think touching base on this, because this is something that I had asked you, Meg. Can we explain a bit about how our team translated Peter Senge's disciplines of a learning organization into the leadership element? So why do some of the disciplines have more elements while some have less? How did we combine and infuse the two?
That's a really long answer. So yeah, that was, there's I will, you know what, let me promise this for a follow-up. Let me send like the citations for the leadership element bank as a follow-up. But basically the process was looking through the Peter Senge's work and the organizational disciplines, and then the descriptions of, the leadership within each discipline, what that means, what the actions are of the leader within that discipline, and then doing a lot of, related research into different articles that were related to each of the disciplines to isolate those, and the definitions for each of the leadership elements. There are citations for those as well. So I would be happy to share those, but the process was not quick. I'm going to, is there anything else? I see that there's 9 in the chat and I don't want to.
No, we're good. We're good. I just posted the resource bank again. I think it's time now to show how they can plan for a culture of learning.
Okay, so getting started. This is, I think, a really helpful resource for getting started within your organization. So if you are thinking like, yeah, I would like to make sure that my leadership development approach is efficient and it's developing people in orientation with the way the organization needs to develop. I think this is a really good start. I've screenshotted this article. We have a link to this article. This is an old article, but it is about learning organizations. And our recommendation is like, learn more about learning organizations. Like, what does that mean to be a learning organization? Sometimes you'll hear about the 5 disciplines. That's Peter Senge's research. In an article like this, or in the survey that goes with this, they talk about building blocks. Those disciplines are included within the building blocks, but they've got 3 building blocks. So there are different ways to talk about it, but generally speaking, these will all kind of lead you down the same path. The thing that I like about this resource is it explains how you can actually measure where your organization is in these organizational disciplines that you want to have for a learning organization. The other thing I like about this article is it actually has the survey attached. Like, there is in this article, you can see all of the questions that are in the survey that you could administer to your team, or you could administer to your school, or, you know, if you wanted to do it district-wide, you could probably do it district-wide. And it has the scoring metrics. So the organizations that you can evaluate where you are versus the median, and that can help you decide where your areas of focus should be. So that, to me, would be a good starting place for where do we want to really lean in? Like, what's the thing we want to learn about? One of the examples of this that I'll just share briefly is you may find that your team is very strong and like you've got a great sense of psychological safety and people are comfortable talking to each other. And we do understand we have different perspectives, and but you know what? The structures aren't in place for us to actually share information very often. We don't have regular time set aside for reflection. We don't have some things that you may find, you may end up learning that your organization really needs to pay attention to concrete learning practices or processes and practices, which is going to suggest a different set of elements for people to reflect on where they think they can move the mark, move the needle for the organization to get a little closer to a learning organization. So these screenshots here are from the resource bank that Bree has shared. So there's just lots of alignment that we're looking at here. And then when you get into the elements, then you can look at the definitions and the different resources that you can find available. Also that the assessment of organizational learning, that's the article that is linked in the earlier slide. So it's a Harvard Business Review article. So that's a starting point. And then getting into that team conversation about your goals and then your individual contributions, the individual goal you have, the plan that you're going to make, the metrics you're going to use, and how are you going to gather feedback. So for that, we also, if you really liked our planning canvas, we have it available for you that you could use and share with your team. And I think Bree's probably put that in the chat too.
Yeah, and I just said too, all of the resources that I've just been dropping in the chat are linked in the slideshow. So we're going to make sure everyone has access to the slideshow, and you'll be able to get the links that from what we're sharing, and you won't just have a million tabs open, which is a very big pet peeve of mine. But yeah, let's just move on. We have one more question. We've got about 10 minutes left. I feel like time is flying. Time always flies when we talk about this stuff, Meg. But what is one thing you are excited to try leaving today's webinar? So in the last 10 minutes, we just want to check in, do a little pulse check. We do still have some things to share with you moving forward about upcoming webinars. But before we do that, we would just love to hear something that you're excited about. whether it's reading the article that was shared or diving deeper into the resource bank. Oh, thank you. Our education elements robot shared that they'll be sharing the recording and links with all registrants after the webinar.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some responses coming in about trying the survey, reading the article, checking out the resources.
And the white paper also, there is so much in that white paper, this leadership elements and exploring leadership for learning organizations is, one of the suggestions that has come from the white paper. There are so many things that are in there that you might want to do a deeper dive on. And there's so many interesting things that we do have, like quite a few conversations that are coming up about the different recommendations that came from the white paper. So I think we've still got people checking out, and please if things come to mind that you want to make sure that we know, go ahead, keep putting your key takeaways or things you're excited about in the chat. And we're going to actually share some things that are coming up too.
Yeah, and I love what I'm seeing in the chat. The white paper is going to be shared with you all. We can drop it in the chat as well before people start signing off. But I just love the ideas, Megan. I feel like it's so heartwarming thinking about moving forward, about maybe there being a shared platform where we can all collaborate on this work, and just loving the slides and just the idea of a learning organization. I mean, this is awesome. Oh, thank you, Monisha, the Ted Lasso slide. Okay, so I'm getting distracted, which is a common thing of mine. But before we let you guys all go, we just wanted to share just some upcoming webinars that are going to be taking place within February and on March 1st. We have the titles here. This was like our kickoff, the first of many webinar series. Similar to this structure, you'll see the bit.ly at the bottom. This information will also be shared with you. And yeah, if we go to the next slide, you'll see that the next webinar is actually on Tuesday, February 1st. I cannot believe that next week it's already February.
And I'm really excited about this one because I'm a former social studies teacher. And this is all about curriculum and teaching social studies. And if there's any other former or current social studies teachers out there, it's really the best subject to teach. So I think this is really interesting.
Yeah, I was a history major as an undergrad, and I'm definitely tuning into this, and I'm going to be geeking out about it just like Megan is. So we will be there joining if you'd like to talk with us about it in the chat. And before we let you guys go, we just wanted to share with you this last slide. Please, please, please subscribe to our blog. We have weekly tips and resources. You can just scan the QR code right now through your screen. But again, this will be shared with you if you don't have access to doing that right now. And yeah, thank you so much for this awesome feedback. And I had so much fun. I know Megan had a lot of fun, not to speak for Megan, but I think it's really just heartwarming, and we appreciate your collaboration as well as just your responsiveness in the chat has been awesome.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, any follow-up, feel free to email. Also, if you subscribe to our blog, I mean, we're pretty easily findable. So I think if we've written blog posts, which I think we both have, you can get in touch with us that way too. So thank you all for joining. It looks like we have given you back 6 minutes of your day. So I hope you enjoy that gift of time. And again, thanks so much for your engagement and for joining our conversation today.
Bye, everyone.